when my daughter-in-law Sarah looked me straight in the eye and said those 5 words that would change everything. I never imagined how quickly the tables would turn. You need to leave this family. The silence that followed was deafening. My son Michael just sat there, staring at his hands, while my granddaughter Emma played innocently in the corner, unaware that her grandmother was being cast out like yesterday's trash. I'm Margaret. I'm 67 years old, and for the past 40 years, I thought I understood what family meant. I raised Michael as a single mother after his father walked out when he was just 3. I worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3, to make sure he had everything he needed: piano lessons, soccer cleats, college tuition. I sacrificed my own dreams, my own happiness, believing that one day he'd appreciate everything I'd done for him. When Michael brought Sarah home 5 years ago, I welcomed her with open arms. She was beautiful, charming, and seemed to make my son happy. What more could a mother want? I helped plan their wedding, contributed more than I could afford to their down payment, and when Emma was born, I was there every single day, helping with feedings, diaper changes, sleepless nights. I thought we were building something beautiful together, but that Thursday evening in October changed everything. Sarah had called earlier, asking dinner. Nothing unusual about that. Me to come over, for I'd been having dinner with them every Thursday for 3 years. It was our tradition, our family time. I even brought Emma's favorite cookies, the ones with the chocolate chips that I baked from scratch every week. The moment I walked through their front door, something felt different. The air was thick with tension. Michael avoided eye contact, and Sarah's smile seemed forced, plastic. Emma ran to me as always, wrapping her tiny arms around my legs, but even her usual enthusiasm couldn't shake the uncomfortable feeling settling in my chest. Dinner was unusually quiet. Sarah barely touched her food, and Michael kept checking his phone like he was expecting an important message. I tried to make conversation, asking about Emma's preschool, about Michael's work promotion, but every response was short, clipped. Finally, Sarah set down her fork and cleared her throat. "Margaret, we need to talk." Those words. Every mother knows those words never lead anywhere good. I looked at my son, hoping for some reassurance, some sign that whatever was coming wouldn't be as bad as it sounded. But he just kept staring at his plate like it held the answers to life's greatest mysteries. "Michael and I have been discussing our future," Sarah continued, her voice steady but cold. "We've decided that we need space to grow as a family. Just the 3 of us." I felt my stomach drop. "What do you mean exactly?" Sarah's perfectly manicured fingers drummed against the table. "We mean that your constant presence is becoming overwhelming. Emma is getting too attached to you, and it's interfering with our parenting. We think it's best if you step back from our lives." Step back. Such innocent words for such a devastating blow. I turned to Michael, my son, the boy I'd raised with every ounce of love in my heart. "Michael, is this what you want?" He finally looked up, and for a split second, I saw the little boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. But then his expression hardened, and he nodded. "Mom, Sarah's right. We need to establish boundaries." Boundaries. When had love become something that needed boundaries? When had a grandmother's devotion become overwhelming? I thought about all the times I dropped everything to help them. The nights I'd stayed up with Emma when she had fever. The groceries I'd bought when money was tight. The countless hours of free babysitting so they could have date nights. "I don't understand," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "I thought we were family." Sarah leaned forward, her eyes sharp as daggers. "We are family. But you're not part of our immediate family anymore. You had your time raising Michael. Now it's our turn to raise Emma without interference." The word interference hit me like a physical blow. Everything I'd done out of love, out of devotion, was being labeled as interference. The bedtime stories, the playground visits, the homemade meals I'd brought over when Sarah was too tired to cook. All of it reduced to unwanted meddling. "Sarah, please, I tried one more time. Emma needs her grandmother. I love that little girl more than life itself. And that's exactly the problem, Sarah snapped, her mask finally slipping. She runs to you before she runs to me. When she gets hurt, she wants Grandma Margaret, not Mommy. You've overstepped, and now we're dealing with the consequences. I looked at Emma, still playing quietly in the corner with the dollhouse I'd bought her for her 3rd birthday. She had no idea that the adults in her life were dismantling her world with casual cruelty. In that moment, I realized this wasn't really about Emma at all. This was about control. Sarah wanted complete control over this family, and I was the obstacle standing in her way. How often can I see her? I asked, my voice hollow with defeat. We'll let you know, Sarah replied dismissively. Maybe holidays, maybe birthdays. We'll see how it goes. Maybe. The uncertainty was almost worse than an outright ban. They were dangling my granddaughter's love like a carrot, keeping me hoping, keeping me desperate. It was psychological warfare disguised as family planning. Michael finally found his voice. Mom, this doesn't mean we don't love you. It just means things need to change. Love. He was talking about love while allowing his wife to banish me from the family I'd helped build. I stood up slowly, my legs shaking with the weight of this betrayal. Emma looked up from her toys, sensing something was wrong. Where are you going, Grandma Margaret? I knelt down and hugged her tight, breathing in her sweet scent, memorizing the feeling of her small body against mine. Grandma has to go home now, sweetheart. Yeah, will you come back tomorrow? The innocence in her question nearly broke me. I looked up at Sarah, silently pleading for some mercy, some compassion. But her expression remained stone cold. We'll see, baby, I whispered, kissing Emma's forehead one last time. As I walked to the door, grabbing my purse with trembling hands, Sarah called out behind me, Margaret, we'd appreciate it if you didn't make this harder than it needs to be. No drama, no guilt trips. We're doing what's best for our family. Their family, not our family. Their family. I drove home in a daze, my mind reeling with the sudden upheaval of everything I thought I knew about my life. My small apartment felt impossibly empty without the promise of Emma's laughter filling it the next day. The refrigerator, usually stocked with her favorite snacks, seemed to mock me with its abundance. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the past 5 years, looking for signs I'd missed. Had I really been interfering? Had my love truly been too much? The questions tormented me until dawn, but with the morning light came something unexpected. Clarity, and with that clarity came the realization that Sarah had made one critical mistake. She thought she knew who she was dealing with. She thought I was just a lonely old woman who would quietly fade away, grateful for whatever scraps of access they might throw my way. She had no idea what she just unleashed. You see, what Sarah didn't know about me could fill libraries. She saw an elderly woman who baked cookies and babysat on weekends. She saw someone she could dismiss with a wave of her perfectly manicured hand. What she didn't see was the woman who had built a successful consulting business from nothing. The woman who had connections throughout the city that stretched back decades. The woman who had survived bankruptcy, divorce, and single motherhood, and had come out stronger every time. I spent the next 3 days in what I can only describe as strategic mourning. I grieved the loss of my Thursday dinners, my daily phone calls with Emma, the spontaneous visits that had filled my retirement with purpose. But grief, I've learned, can be a powerful motivator when channeled correctly. On the 4th day, I made my first phone call. Rebecca? It's Margaret. Yes, I know it's been too long. Listen, I need a favor. Rebecca Martinez had been my business partner 20 years ago before she moved into real estate. She now owned the most successful property management company in the city. More importantly, she managed the rental property where Michael and Sarah lived. Margaret, what's going on? You sound different. I told her everything. The dinner, the dismissal, the way they'd used Emma as a weapon against me. Rebecca listened in silence, and when I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Those ungrateful little... She caught herself. Margaret, I had no idea. What do you need? Information. I need to know everything about their lease agreement, their payment history, any issues they've had. Consider it done. I'll have the file pulled by this afternoon. My second call was to David Chin, my accountant for the past 15 years. David had helped me navigate the complex world of business finances when I was building my consulting firm. David, I need you to review some financial documents for me. It's about Michael and Sarah. What kind of documents? Everything. Bank statements, credit reports, employment records, whatever you can legally access. David's voice carried a note of concern. Margaret, what's this about? This sounds serious. It is serious. My family just declared war on me. I need to know exactly what I'm dealing with. The third call was the hardest to make. Janet Morrison had been my closest friend for 30 years, but she was also Sarah's boss at the marketing firm where Sarah worked. I'd helped Janet get that job when her husband left her with 3 kids to support. Janet, we need to talk. Can you meet me for coffee tomorrow? Of course, honey. Is everything all right? You sound upset. I'll explain tomorrow. Just bring your employee handbook. That evening, I sat in my kitchen with a yellow legal pad, mapping out everything I knew about Michael and Sarah's life. Their mortgage payments, their car loans, their credit card debt, the vacation they'd taken to Europe last spring that they'd somehow afforded on their modest salaries, the new kitchen renovation that had cost more than my car. The picture that emerged wasn't pretty. They were living far beyond their means, propped up by credit, and what I now realized had been my own financial contributions. The down payment help I'd given them, the loans that were never repaid, the constant gifts of money disguised as birthday presents and Christmas bonuses. I'd been subsidizing their lifestyle without even realizing it. Rebecca called me back that night with news that made my blood run cold. Margaret, they're 3 months behind on rent. 3 months. I've been sending notices, but they keep promising the money's coming. I was actually going to start eviction proceedings next week. 3 months. While they were eating dinner at expensive restaurants and posting photos of their perfect life on social media, they weren't paying their rent. While Sarah was buying designer handbags and Michael was upgrading his golf clubs, they were stealing from their landlord. Rebecca, hold off on the eviction for now. I have a better idea. What are you thinking? I'm thinking about buying the building. The silence on the other end of the line stretched for a full 10 seconds. Margaret, that building is worth $2 million. I know. Can you set up a meeting with the owner? What Rebecca didn't know, what none of them knew, was that my consulting business had been more successful than I'd ever let on. I'd learned early in life to keep my financial success private. Too many people start treating you differently when they know you have money. Too many relationships become about what you can provide rather than who you are. I'd lived modestly, driven older cars, shopped at discount stores, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I wanted my relationships to be genuine. I wanted people to love me for me, not for my bank account. The irony wasn't lost on me. The very financial success I'd hidden to protect my family relationships was now going to be the weapon I used to reclaim them. David called the next morning with Sarah's employment records. Margaret, I've got good news and bad news. Which do you want first? Bad news first, always. She's been written up twice for performance issues. Once for missing important deadlines, once for what her supervisor called attitude problems with clients. And the good news? Her boss is apparently very fond of her grandmother-in-law, who helped her get the job in the first place. I smiled for the first time in days. David, you're brilliant. Margaret, what exactly are you planning? I'm planning to remind some people what family actually means. My meeting with Janet that afternoon was eye-opening in ways I hadn't expected. We sat in our usual corner booth at Rosie's Diner, the same place we'd been meeting for coffee once a month for 20 years. Sarah's been struggling, Janet admitted after I'd explained the situation. Her work quality has declined significantly over the past year. She seems distracted, stressed, and frankly, she's been making some questionable decisions. But what kind of questionable decisions? Janet looked around nervously before leaning in closer. She's been using company resources for personal projects. Nothing huge, but enough to notice. And there was an incident with a client last month where she was incredibly rude. The client specifically requested not to work with her again. Is her job in jeopardy? It wasn't before, but honestly, yes. I've been trying to help her because of our friendship, because of how much you've done for me over the years. But my hands are getting tied. I reached across the table and took Janet's hand. I would never ask you to do anything that would compromise your position or your integrity. But I think it's time Sarah learned about consequences. What do you mean? I mean, stop protecting her. Let her succeed or fail on her own merit. Janet nodded slowly. I can do that. Actually, it'll be a relief. I've been covering for her more than I should have been. That night, I made one final call. This one to my lawyer, Patricia Williams. Patricia had handled my business contracts for years and had become a trusted advisor. Patricia, I need to discuss some property investments and family law matters. Interesting combination. What's going on, Margaret? I told her the whole story, leaving nothing out. When I finished, Patricia was quiet for a moment. Margaret, I understand you're hurt and angry, but are you sure this is the path you want to take? Once you start down this road, there might not be a way back. Patricia, they didn't just hurt me. They're using my granddaughter as a weapon. They're teaching her that love is conditional, that family can be discarded when convenient. If I don't do something now, Emma will grow up thinking that's normal. All right then, let's discuss your options. By the end of that week, I owned the building where Michael and Sarah lived. By the following Monday, I had a complete picture of their financial situation. By Wednesday, Sarah's job performance review was scheduled with HR present. The stage was set. All the pieces were in place. Now it was time to show them what happened when you underestimated Margaret Henderson. The first move came on a Tuesday morning. Michael called me, his voice tight with panic. Mom, we got a notice from the landlord. They're saying we need to pay 3 months of back rent or face eviction. I don't understand how this happened so fast. I sat in my kitchen, sipping my morning coffee, watching the rain streak down the window. That's terrible, Michael. How much do you owe? $4,500. Mom, I know things have been tense between us, but could you help? Just this once? We'll pay you back, I promise. The desperation in his voice almost broke my resolve. Almost. But then I remembered Sarah's cold eyes as she dismissed me from their family. I remembered Emma's confused face as I walked away. Michael, I'm not sure that's something I can do right now. My finances are quite tight. The lie came easily. Too easily, perhaps. But sometimes lies serve a greater truth. But Mom, you always help us. You've never said no before. Things change, sweetheart. Priorities shift. I'm sure you and Sarah will figure something out. After all, you're establishing boundaries, right? This seems like the perfect time to establish some financial independence. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. When he finally spoke, his voice was small, defeated. Can we at least talk about this in person? I don't think that would be appropriate. Sarah made it very clear that I'm not part of your immediate family anymore. I wouldn't want to interfere. I hung up before he could respond, my hands trembling slightly. Phase 1 was complete. That afternoon, Sarah called. Her voice was different from Michael's. Where his had been pleading, hers was demanding. Margaret, Michael told me about your conversation this morning. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Oh, what kind of misunderstanding? We never said you couldn't help us financially. We just said you needed to respect our parenting decisions. The audacity was breathtaking. She wanted to cut me out of Emma's life, but keep my checkbook available for emergencies. Sarah, I think you made your position quite clear. You want space to grow as a family. Financial independence seems like a natural part of that growth. Don't be ridiculous. We're not asking for charity. We'll pay you back with interest. I'm sure you will. But I've decided to redirect my financial resources toward other priorities. What other priorities? You don't have any other family. The cruelty in those words was stunning. She just confirmed what I'd suspected all along. In her mind, I was nothing more than a lonely old woman whose only value was her willingness to open her wallet. Actually, Sarah, I've been thinking about that a lot lately. You're absolutely right. I don't have much family, so I've decided to invest in building new relationships, people who actually want me in their lives. You're being petty. I'm being practical. Goodbye, Sarah. The next blow came from an unexpected direction. Janet called me that evening, her voice carefully professional. Margaret, I wanted to give you a heads up. Sarah's been placed on a performance improvement plan. She has 30 days to bring her work up to acceptable standards. What does that mean exactly? It means if she doesn't dramatically improve her performance, her employment will be terminated. I felt a flicker of something that might have been guilt, but I pushed it aside. I hadn't created Sarah's work problems. I'd simply stopped protecting her from the consequences of her own actions. I appreciate you letting me know. Margaret, are you sure about this? I know she hurt you, but losing her job could devastate their family. Janet, what would you tell any other employee who was underperforming and using company resources for personal gain? I'd put them on a performance improvement plan. Then you're doing exactly what you should be doing. By Friday, the pressure was building. Rebecca called to update me on the rental situation. They came to my office today, both of them. They're begging for an extension, promising they can get the money together by next month. What did you tell them? I told them I'd discuss it with the new owner. And what does the new owner think? Rebecca laughed. The new owner thinks they've had 3 months to figure this out. 3 months of living rent-free while other people pay their bills on time. The new owner sounds very reasonable. That weekend was torture. I kept expecting my phone to ring, kept hoping Michael would show up at my door with Emma, ready to apologize and make things right. But the silence stretched on, heavy and oppressive. On Sunday afternoon, I was watering my plants when I saw a familiar car pull into my driveway. My heart leaped. Maybe this was it. Maybe they'd come to their senses. But when the car door opened, only Michael got out. No Sarah, no Emma. He walked to my front door like a man heading to his own execution. I opened it before he could knock. Mom, we need to talk. He looked terrible. His hair was disheveled, his clothes wrinkled, and there were dark circles under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and overwhelming stress. Come in, sweetheart. We sat in my living room, the same room where Emma used to build pillow forts and demand stories about princesses and dragons. The silence was deafening. I don't know what's happening to us, he said finally. Everything's falling apart. Sarah might lose her job. We're going to lose the house. And Emma keeps asking why Grandma Margaret doesn't come over anymore. My heart clenched at the mention of Emma, but I kept my expression neutral. That sounds very stressful. Mom, I know you're angry. I know we handled things badly, but this isn't just about us anymore. Emma's involved. She doesn't understand why you disappeared from her life. I didn't disappear, Michael. I was asked to leave. It wasn't supposed to be permanent. Sarah just thought some space would help. Space for what? He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I recognized from his childhood when he was trying to work through a difficult problem. She felt like Emma was more attached to you than to her, like you were undermining her authority as a mother. By loving Emma? By spending time with her? By being her grandmother? By always being there? By always having the answer? By always being the fun one while Sarah had to be the disciplinarian? For the first time, I began to understand the root of Sarah's resentment. It wasn't really about boundaries or interference. It was about competition. She saw me as a rival for Emma's affection rather than as an additional source of love in her daughter's life. Michael, do you remember when you were Emma's age and you fell off your bike? He looked confused by the change of subject. Vaguely. You scraped your knee pretty badly. Mrs. Patterson from next door cleaned the wound and put a bandage on it while I was at work. When I came home and saw the bandage, do you know what I did? No. I thanked her. I didn't feel threatened that you'd run to her instead of waiting for me. I was grateful that there was another adult in your life who cared enough to help you when you were hurt. The implication hung in the air between us. Michael stared at his hands, processing what I was really saying. Sarah sees it differently. Sarah sees love as a finite resource. She thinks that if Emma loves me, there's less love available for her. But love doesn't work that way, Michael. Love multiplies when it's shared. It grows stronger when it has more people to nurture it. I tried to explain that to her. Did you? Or did you take the path of least resistance and sacrifice your mother to keep your wife happy? The words were harsher than I'd intended, but they needed to be said. Michael flinched as if I'd struck him. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? Because from where I sit, it looks like you threw away 37 years of unconditional love to avoid a difficult conversation with your wife. He stood up abruptly, pacing to the window that overlooked the garden where I taught him to plant tomatoes when he was 10 years old. She's my wife, Mom. I have to support her, even when she's wrong, even when it's complicated. I joined him at the window, looking out at the garden that was beginning to show signs of autumn. The leaves were changing colors, preparing for the dormant season ahead. Michael, do you want to know why I'm not helping you financially right now? He turned to face me, hope flickering in his eyes. It's not because I don't love you. It's not because I want to see you suffer. It's because you need to learn something that I failed to teach you when you were younger. What's that? That actions have consequences. That you can't treat people badly and then expect them to rescue you from the results of that treatment. That real love sometimes requires saying no. His shoulders sagged with the weight of understanding. So what happens now? We lose everything? I don't know, sweetheart. That depends on what you and Sarah decide to do next. What do you mean? I mean you have choices to make. About what kind of family you want to be. About what values you want to teach Emma. About whether you want to fight for this family or let it fall apart. He was quiet for a long time, staring out at the garden where generations of my family had learned to nurture growing things. What would it take, he asked finally, for you to forgive us? For things to go back to the way they were? They can't go back, Michael. Too much has been said. Too much damage has been done. But they could move forward if everyone was willing to do the work. What kind of work? The hard kind. The kind that requires admitting mistakes and changing behavior. The kind that requires putting Emma's needs above adult egos and power struggles. He nodded slowly, understanding beginning to dawn in his eyes. I need to talk to Sarah. Yes, you do. But Michael, this time really talk to her. Don't just find a way to smooth things over or avoid conflict. Have the conversation that needs to be had, even if it's difficult. After he left, I sat in my quiet house, surrounded by the memories of happier times. Photo albums full of Michael's childhood, art projects Emma had made for me, birthday cards with crayon hearts and misspelled words of love. The phone rang just after sunset. It was Rebecca. Margaret, you need to know something. Sarah showed up at my office this afternoon. She was asking questions about the new owner of the building. My blood ran cold. What kind of questions? She wanted to know if there was any way to negotiate directly with them. She seemed to think she might be able to work out a deal if she could bypass me as the property manager. What did you tell her? I told her the new owner values privacy and conducts all business through me. But Margaret, she was asking very specific questions about the purchase date and the financing. I think she suspects something. The game was changing. Sarah was smarter than I'd given her credit for, and she was starting to connect the dots. If she figured out that I was behind their mounting problems, she'd have ammunition to use against me. But I'd come too far to back down now. Emma's future depended on the lessons we taught her about family, love, and consequences. If I gave in now, if I let them manipulate their way back into my good graces without any real change, what would that teach my granddaughter about her own worth? Number. This had to play out to its conclusion, whatever that might be. The real battle was just beginning. Monday morning brought the confrontation I'd been both dreading and anticipating. Sarah called at exactly 7:30, her voice sharp with accusation. "We know it's you." I set down my coffee cup carefully, buying myself time to think. "I'm sorry, what are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb with me, Margaret. The timing is too convenient. First, you refuse to help us, then suddenly our landlord becomes impossible to work with, and now there's some mysterious new owner who won't negotiate. You bought the building, didn't you?" The directness of her attack caught me off guard, but I learned long ago that the best defense against accusations was often silence. Let people fill the quiet with their own assumptions and revelations. "Sarah, I think the stress of your situation is making you paranoid." "Am I?" "Because I did some research, Margaret. Public records are fascinating things. Property transfers, LLC formations, business registrations. It's amazing what you can find when you know where to look." My heart rate quickened, but I kept my voice steady. "I have no idea what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. You want to destroy us because we hurt your precious feelings. Well, congratulations. You're winning. But you're destroying Emma's life in the process." There it was, the weapon she'd been saving for last. My granddaughter's well-being, twisted into a tool of emotional manipulation. Emma's life is being destroyed by parents who can't pay their bills and blame everyone else for their problems. "We wouldn't have these problems if you weren't sabotaging us." The mask was completely off now. Gone was any pretense of family harmony or reasonable disagreement. This was pure warfare. 3 weeks later, Sarah's car pulled into my driveway, but this time she wasn't alone. Emma's little face pressed against the window, and when she saw me, her smile could have lit up the entire neighborhood. Sarah got out slowly, her designer clothes replaced with simple jeans and a sweater, her usual confidence nowhere to be found. "Margaret," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "can we please talk?" But it was Emma who ran to me first, throwing her arms around my waist like she'd done 1,000 times before. "Grandma Margaret, Mommy said we could come see you." As I held my granddaughter, feeling her warm little body against mine, I looked over her head at Sarah. The woman who had dismissed me from their family now stood on my doorstep, humbled by the consequences of her own choices. "Please," Sarah said again, and for the first time since I'd known her, I heard genuine remorse in her voice. "I need your help, not your money, your forgiveness. Emma needs her grandmother, and I was wrong about everything. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't destruction. It's teaching someone the true value of what they tried to throw away." As I invited them inside, Emma's laughter filling my home once again, I realized that my plan had worked better than I'd ever imagined. What started as a lesson in consequences had become something much more powerful, a second chance at being the family we were always meant to be.